Welcome everyone. This will actually be a short video. I know I always say that, but today it will be a short video. This is a very small topic. It'll be easy to get this over with very quickly. I've got a bunch of verses here ready. And basically, the myth says that, when you die, and I have a lot of Christian friends from different denominations that believe this. Seventh-day Adventists believe this. A bunch of different churches teach it. That when you die, that everybody who's ever died from the dawn of time is dead, and they're in like this sleep, like a state of sleep or something. So you're just dreaming, or some people say, you're just in blackness or something like that. It's a very grim concept, right? And they say that everybody's just asleep until the great one and only Judgment Day. And this is like a very catchy, believable thing. When you're younger, it's easy to believe that. When you get older, you stop and you think and you ask yourself, it doesn't really seem to be fair. Why does that person back then have to stay asleep 4,000 years, 5,000 years? You know what I mean? And some people only have to be asleep for a day or two. You know what I mean? It's not fair. There's a lot of ways you can look at it like that. But really, at the end of the day, and plus, like I said, it's kind of grim and cruel that everybody's just going to be asleep or like in a coma. You know what I mean? Like, and if you do dream, are you going to have good or bad dreams? And like, 1,000 years dreaming, like, that's scary, man. So, thankfully, the reality is not as grim or frightening as, well, it technically is because you're going to be judged, but it's not going to be as grim as being asleep for an indefinite period of time. Okay? First, I just want to read this one little verse here because I think it's kind of amusing. 1 second. Drink that too fast. Okay, just water, by the way. In 1 Corinthians 15, verse 51, it says, "Lo, I tell you a secret. We indeed shall not all sleep, and we all shall be changed." Okay? And no matter what context you're viewing this in, the point is, when people claim, like I was told growing up and this and that there, that everybody goes to sleep, that is not correct. Because the verse just says here, we indeed shall not all sleep. But more importantly, if we, if we read in Hebrews 9, verse 27, it lays it out very clearly, okay? It says, "And as it is laid up to men once to die, and after this, judgment." Okay, this is basically a hint at what we will go through, that when you die, you are judged right then and there, okay? And, a lot of people might think, oh, but what about the big, great white throne judgment and this and that there? Okay, I'll get to the Armageddon thing in a second. Some people are confusing the Armageddon thing with this, right? But this is not taking away from when you die, you will be before God, okay? You will be before God. You're not going to be on a desert island. You're not going to be in Fiji or something like that. You're going to be probably in front of God's throne when you're being judged, okay? And there's probably going to be fleets of angels all around to participate and witness in this, okay? And it's going to happen right then and there, all right? Supported by this verse and all the other ones I'm about to go through, okay? Proven by the verses I'm about to go through. And after you're judged, you're sent to your destination location. If you've been good, you go to paradise. If you've been bad, well, you've got a number of places that you can go. You can either, if you've been super naughty, you can go down to the abyss, which is reserved for like Satan and the worst of the worst. Okay, in the abyss, you basically don't have anything, any body, there is nothing, it's just a void. Okay, it's why it's called the abyss. It is a void. And you could also be sent to Hades. Okay, and let's just keep it short for now. Right, Hades, basically what people conceive of as hell. That's what the Bible calls it. And hey there, folks. Hey, John Lee, and I can't pronounce your name, unfortunately, because I don't read. Is it Hindi or Tamil, maybe? It doesn't look like Arabic. But greetings. I had a strange premonition that you would come on here, the one with the foreign language name. I had a weird premonition that you would come on. But nonetheless, right? You're going to go to one of your destination locations. So if you've been super bad, like I said, the abyss. If you've been less bad, you go down to Hades. Now, there's different regions in Hades, believe it or not. And one of the verses I'm going to read proves this as well. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to read this verse next. From from 1 Peter 3:19 it says, "In which also to the spirits in prison, having gone, he did preach." This is talking about Jesus. So Jesus went, and obviously after he died, because it talks about in other verses how after he died he descended down before he went up, okay? And he was in the bowels of the earth for 3 days, right? This is the famous thing. So, in which also to the spirits in prison, having gone, he did preach. This verse shows us quite a few things, okay? Number one, that when Jesus died, he didn't slumber forever, perpetually, okay? But people could play on that and say, oh, but he's the one exception. He needed to resurrect right away from the sleep. So, we can't go down that avenue. But what we can discern from this, okay, is that there are spirits in prison. Do you see what I mean? So the people who think that everybody's already asleep and everybody's in this 1,000-year coma, well, what spirits did Jesus go preach to? You know what I mean? When he went down into the underworld and whatever, into the lower regions, presumably to Hades, where are these spirits from? Okay, exactly, they're the ones there. But even if you still don't believe, let's go further. And in 1 Peter 4 verse 6 it says 4 twice. That's weird. Must be from the preceding verse. Anyways, 1 Peter 4:6, for this also to dead men was good news proclaimed, that they may be judged indeed according to men in the flesh, and may live according to God in the Spirit. Actually, I think I should have read that after something else, but when it says to dead men was good news also proclaimed, yeah, a little part of me thinks that's referencing the verse that I just read before that one. He's preached to the spirits in prison. But the other part of me thinks that it's figurative speech. Okay? And in either case, it works in my favor because I have a whole other section here on the figurative speech of being dead and being asleep and dead and all that there. Okay? So in either case, it works in my favor. But let's move on. Luke 23 verse 43 is very, very powerful. It says, "And Jesus said to him," he's talking to the thief that was dying with him on the cross, "and he said to him, Verily, I say to thee, today with me thou shalt be in the paradise." Okay? Today. And he says, verily. Alright? That supports what I have claimed here, which is the reality that when you die, you are immediately judged and then immediately sent to your deserved destination location. Okay? Jesus proclaimed that this man was worthy. And he just said, today you're going to be with me in paradise. So this proves that the day they died, okay, or even if the guy died before, whatever how it went down, maybe the guy died the same time as Jesus. The point being, when you die, you go straight there. You're not asleep. That guy didn't go to sleep. Jesus didn't say, oh, you're worthy, but you're going to go to sleep now for 2,000 years, and then you're going to suddenly wake up at a judgment and you're going to be worthy. No, he said, you're coming with me to paradise today. Okay? So you can't really argue with that too much, right? And for what that says it all. I mean, even 2 Corinthians 12:4, Paul says he knew somebody that was caught away to the paradise. Okay, so, I mean, you got two pieces of proof, right? That people who have gone to paradise. And the most important one is Jesus declaring what he just said, right? Now, the next very powerful verse to read is, here we go. In Matthew, in Matthew 22, verse 32, the Jews are questioning Jesus and blah, blah, blah. And Jesus mentions the name of Abraham. He says, Abraham rejoiced when he saw me. And the Jews said, how could that be possible? Abraham's dead. Because the Jews believe, back then they probably believed the myth that you sleep afterwards, right? They're very carnal-minded. But Jesus corrected them. He said, let me open up the whole chapter here. 22:32. That verse by itself isn't really good. Okay, and Jesus, this is starting in verse 29 now. And Jesus answering said to them, Ye go astray, not knowing the writings nor the power of God. For in the rising again they do not marry, nor are they given in marriage, but are as messengers of God in heaven. And concerning the rising again of the dead, did ye not read that which was spoken to you by God, saying, that I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? God is not a God of dead men, but of living. And having heard, the multitudes were astonished at his teaching. So what Jesus just clarified, and he also points this out in a number of places, which I think I just closed, I can ding that. Let me bring that back up then. Search for living and dead. So here we go. So you can read about that in Matthew 22, verse 32. He also repeats the very same thing in Mark 12, verse 27. He's not the God of dead men, but a God of the living. You go greatly astray, obviously, if you think otherwise, he's saying. And also in Luke 20, verse 38. So it's confirmed in 3 places in the Gospels that those patriarchs are not sleeping, they're not dead, they have gone on to their destinations, okay, where they deserve to go. Now, also we can look at the story of Lazarus, okay, in Luke 16, verse 20. And there was a certain poor man by the name of Lazarus, who was laid at his porch full of sores, and desiring to be filled from the crumbs that are falling from the table of the rich man, yea, also the dogs coming were licking his sores. And it came to pass, that the poor man died, and that he was carried away by the messengers. Okay? And it came to pass that the poor man died, and that he was carried away by the messengers to the bosom of Abraham. That says it all right there. He died and was carried away by the messengers to the bosom of Abraham, which is, if it's not paradise, it's a blessed place in the lower realms. Okay, like a in between. Like you go there for a little while, when you purged off the last little bit of your debt, or whatever it is, then you go up to the great paradise, right? There's no question that people in Jesus' time went to paradise, okay, because Jesus just said what he said to the thief, right? So you have to keep that in mind. So, where was it? So he was carried away, blah, 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 to the bosom of Abraham. And the rich man also died and was buried. And in the Hades. So boom, right there you go. The rich man died. He didn't wait thousands of years till the final judgment after the Armageddon when Jesus comes back in a second. He didn't go through all that. He was judged and sentenced and sent right away. And it says that he died and was buried. And in the Hades, having lifted up his eyes, being in torments, he does see Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. Okay? Because down in the Hades, which is simply the term for the spiritual realm, all around us, is beyond our knowledge of physics, time, space, and matter. Okay? When you're in this Hades realm, time is very different. You could be there for a week, and it might feel like 10,000 years. Okay? This is how God helps burn away people's remaining debt and so forth. If you've been a bad person, okay, you don't go to paradise, you go to this place here. You see what I mean? Okay, so when you're down in these places, there's different regions. There's worse ones, lower down, more fiery, more demonic. And there's ones that aren't as bad. There's even some, as many say, that are more blessed, even in this region, called Hades, right? And one of these regions, even the Jews agree, is called the bosom of Abraham. Okay, that's not typically a name given to paradise. Alright, so, and it's not to say that Abraham doesn't deserve to be in paradise. Maybe he just went down to the bosom of Abraham, down in the Hades region, to welcome Lazarus. You see what I mean? In either case, it doesn't really matter, because what I'm trying to prove here has been proven, that when you die, you're judged and you're sent away. Alright? And in verse 24, and having cried, he said, Father Abraham, deal kindly with me. He's looking across the great chasm to the other region in Hades, right? Hades isn't right smack next to paradise, but that kind of supports what I was just rambling on about, right? The bosom of Abraham is logically a nicer region within Hades, okay? And he's looking over at Abraham saying, deal kindly with me, right? And send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and may cool my tongue, because I am distressed in this flame. So the rich man was probably in a very hellish region of Hades. Okay? And Abraham said, Child, remember that thou did receive thou the good things in thy life, and Lazarus in the like manner the evil things, and now he is comforted, and thou art distressed. And besides all these things, between us and you, a great chasm, like I said, is fixed, so that they who are willing to go over from hence unto you are not able, nor do they from thence to us pass through. Okay? So, yeah, the bosom of Abraham probably is in Hades somewhere, right? A wonderful section. You see what I mean? Because Hades is just a term for the spiritual realm, the non-physical. We're in the physical, the land of mortality, the land of flesh. Okay? The spiritual realm has no flesh. It has no mortality. Okay? So, there you go. We're in the land of birth and death. Things aren't born and they don't die in the spiritual realm. That's why you can have near eternal or eternal, everlasting, if you want to call it that, everlasting punishment there. Because you're not going to be born, you're not going to die. There's no real such thing as time. It's just perpetual, on and on and on. You can't even conceive of time. That's part of the horrible condition of being sentenced there, right? To make it so grievous for the inmates. So anyways, it's very clear. Like I said, you're judged at death and then you're sent. But for anybody who's, for lack of better words, still being hard-headed and they still think, oh, but it says this elsewhere. I try to think outside the box and think what people might have to say as a comeback, right? So what I realized is that they might bring up the talk of the great white throne judgment, okay? And even the book of Daniel where it talks about, I think it's the same thing, the great judgment, okay? What people have to understand is both John in Revelations and Daniel in the book of Daniel are literally both talking about the end times, right? Yes, we all understand that. They're talking about the apocalypse at the end of days, okay? At the end of days, people are going to stop being born, okay? That means that everybody, up until that deadline, okay, everybody who's been born and living, they're going to die because everything's coming to an end, right? So as they approach that deadline, the number of dead are going to increase, right? Now, those who are alive in the final days themselves, right? I'm not God. I don't know the last few days, last week, last few weeks, however death and all that works, I don't know, right? In the last crunch time, okay, that's why we have a translation. That's why we have a resurrection. Okay, people have thought that, oh, the resurrection of the dead, it's every single person who's ever died is going to be resurrected. Well, no, because that would contradict all the verses that I just read here. Okay, God's not a God of the dead. You're coming to paradise with me today. Yeah, all the ones I just went through. So people would say, and understandably so, then why is there a great resurrection and all the live in and the dead would raise? Well, you have to stop and think. We're at the end of time, like I said. We're coming to the deadline. No more people getting born. So everybody's going to die up until that point. The worthy aren't going to die. They'll be translated, right? So if you're not worthy of death, you're not going to receive the death. You'll be translated, and you go on up, right? At the very end. Cool. Okay, so everybody else who dies, what happens to them? If you die from all the disasters and the tribulations or just old age, you die in the days before Jesus arrives, or on the day Jesus arrives, just before he pops down onto the planet, you're dead. So how are you going to be judged? You need to be resurrected, right? That's what I mean. If you're dying right at the end, at the crunch time, and nobody can tell me, oh, but it's not like there's going to be many people that... The book of Revelation says, like, these angels come out of the ground, 1/3 of mankind dead. In another place it says this thing hits the earth, 1/4 of mankind dead. That's 58% of mankind dead in one day. Okay, that's billions of people. So you got billions of people dying on the very day that Jesus pops down. That's why you're going to have a resurrection, because they're all going to be dead and they need to be judged. So Jesus, and they're not going to go zipping away to, if they're going to paradise, they're just going to go straight to paradise, right? Good for them, right? But they're not going to go down into hell and then 20 seconds later, oh wait, no, sorry, you need to come back up here. Jesus needs you. It's not going to happen like that. You're going to be dead, and if you're right there at the end there, yeah, you might sleep for a day, a couple of days, whatever, who knows, right? And then bam, then you get resurrected. And like it says, the good and the bad will resurrect, right? So I really suspect it's probably on the final day itself. But like I said, I'm not God. I'm not in charge of the time periods. I don't know how death and all that works, all right? So that's why there is a resurrection, all right? Quite simply. Why was there a mini resurrection when Jesus resurrected? You know, like the people, the saints that rose in the city? That was to further prove to people, right? Jesus resurrected, in the scriptures, I'm pretty sure say, to prove to people that it was possible. Okay, because even the Jews, the Pharisees, or the Sadducees, whichever one, they didn't believe in resurrection. So Jesus resurrecting proved that, A, he was what he was talking about. He had that divine connection, and holy moly, look, he just rose from the dead. Okay, it is all real. There is life after death. It proves so many things all in one package, right? But you would have the naysayers saying, oh, he's just a false god. He's a demon. You know what I mean? He can do magic, sorcery, and blah, blah, blah. He's a supernatural being. And how would you combat that? You would have humans popping up out of the ground, resurrecting. And what does it say? It says that they were the saints, something along the lines of the saints who had just died. Okay? Not ones who've been sleeping for aeons, right? The ones who had just died, resurrected, and went off to see their loved ones, and people who knew them saw them and whatever. I'm almost dead complete certain it says that exactly. Okay, so it was to prove to people the case. That wasn't meant to be the whole resurrection, obviously, because a handful of saints resurrected, obviously for whatever reason, to testify of the greatness of Jesus and so forth. Okay, so the next thing to keep this video short, right, that's enough on why there's a resurrection. Okay, the great throne judgment, you know, that's because it's basically tied to what I just said about the resurrection, right? You're going to have so many people, billions of people dying in one day, okay, that, and, you know, there might be a judgment here on this earth, or it might actually all take place in God's realm. However it works doesn't really matter. When the apocalypse has ended, right, and it's that final day, and the resurrection occurs, and the good and the bad are resurrected, bam, those who just died, bam, you're brought up, everybody's judged who hasn't been judged yet, okay? That will be the great throne judgment. It's still real, and I'm not taking away from that, okay? But I think the final thing that people, the naysayers, might say as a comeback is that they would use a verse like this, which seems to suggest that you sleep after you die, right? It says that in 1 Corinthians 15:20, it says, and now Christ is risen out of the dead, the first fruits of those sleeping he became. Okay, and this little verse by itself is contrary to everything I've just given as evidence, right? Complete opposite. But people use it as proof to say, oh, you sleep when you die, right? Now, it's figurative, it's not literal. And I can prove this here, right? When you search, where is it? You're searching for the terms dead and sleep, right? This isn't a comprehensive search, but the verses I found with a little bit of searching prove it enough, right? Sleeping there is figurative. In Ephesians 5:14, it says, wherefore he saith, arouse thyself, thou who art sleeping, and arise out of the dead, and the Christ shall shine upon thee. That is obvious figurative talk. And this is found in a number of other places, right? From the mouth of Jesus and the disciples, all right? So it's quite obvious that when it's talking about sleeping like this, you're asleep, it's talking about when you're still alive, not even when you're dead, okay? And this is all big play on words. It's saying that, you know, you're a living person, but you're asleep in sin, okay? And to wake up out of that sin. Because really, when you're asleep like that in sin, it's like you're dead. And that's why it says, arouse thyself, thou who art sleeping, and arise out of the dead, and the Christ shall shine upon thee. Okay? Now, some people take this, right? And they try to say that there is no resurrection. Okay? One of the principles of Judaism is you must believe in the resurrection, right? But, I mean, who cares about that? The point is, well, they are correct, right? But there has to be a resurrection because there's going to be billions of people dying. Like I just said, right? It just makes a lot more sense. If you have billions of people dying right then and there, it would make a lot more sense to just do, it's just more efficient, right? But, where is it? who are sleeping and arise out of the dead, and the Christ shall shine upon thee. I'm pretty sure I had that other verse that I read earlier. Yeah, in 1 Peter 4:6, right? Let me bring it back to this. It says, for this also to dead men was good news proclaimed. Remember that verse I read earlier? That they may be judged, indeed, according to men in the flesh, and may live according to God in the Spirit. This is obviously not talking about people who are dead in the grave, sleeping, because it says so that they may live according to God in the Spirit. This is obviously figurative speech, okay? And it proves that Jesus and the disciples, okay, therefore God, uses the terminology of being asleep and dead in figurative context, right? It's very obvious when he does that. He doesn't make it confusing. It's very, very obvious. Okay, it doesn't take too much homework to break it down, right? So that's why. So you can't come up and say there are verses that suggest we're asleep and we're going to be raised from the sleep, because those are figurative verses talking about the nature of sin in yourself. See my point? So that's basically that. I'm just going to make sure I didn't have any other verses here, and if anybody watching has any questions or something, I'll take a tackle at checking the comments. There might be this one thing, sorry. Yeah. Now, the people on cover all my bases, some people might also pull up verses like where it says in 2 Timothy 4:1, who's about to judge the living and the dead, right? At the manifestation and his reign. 1 Peter 4:5, who is ready to judge living and dead, okay? We also have to remember that in Revelations 1:18, it says that, Amen, I have the keys of the Hades and of the death. Okay? These verses might, if you haven't heard the evidence I gave in this video, and you just hear these verses out of context, you're going to think, oh, he's the judge of the living and the dead. That gives you the impression that the dead, long story short, are asleep, and they're all going to come up at one time. Everybody from the dawn of time. Okay? But in light of all the other evidence here, we know that this is not the case. Okay, when he's going to judge the living, those who are alive, no problem understanding that. When it says he'll judge the dead, well, he's going to resurrect them. He's going to resurrect those billions of people that just died and judge them. And I would even go a step further and say it's symbolically also referring to the spirits who are in the Hades regions, okay, where it says judging the living and the dead. Because we had that verse where it says that Jesus went to preach to the spirits in prison. Right? So if he's preaching to the spirits in prison, he's preaching the gospel. The gospel is about salvation. So this obviously shows us, okay, and who are we to be hypocrites and say, oh, they don't deserve that, because what if they say that about us, right? Obviously, Jesus is giving them the gospel of salvation. So this shows us that even those in the lower hells, the Hades regions, to each their own, okay, that they can obtain salvation. That's amazing. That's impressive. Right? And that's also reassuring in case any of us do go down to hell for any period of time. Okay, there is a way out, and it is through Jesus. All right, so keeping that in mind, I don't see a problem with it where it says he's a judge of living and the dead, because now I understand it all properly, right? So if anybody has any questions, I'm done doing all my yakking. And like usual, I'll go back and read all the comments and reply to everything in its own time. I've got lots of other videos I still have to do that with. I think most people, even most people who go to a church that teaches you go to sleep, I think most people in the back of their head instinctively know and feel that when they die, they're going to be judged right away. Everybody I've spoken to gives me that impression. But there are those people who swear down, oh no, you're going to be asleep, and they're the uber churchy ones. But like I said, well, I've got to go. Anyways, take care, folks.